What's happening, YouTube? As you can see by the background behind me, the Xavia build is finally complete and I'm happy to show it to you guys. So let's get to that video. Cause we could be immortals, immortals, just like the love. So here it is, guys, the Xavia build. I'm very proud of this build, actually. It came out looking rather sweet. I do like the cube style for the micro ATX motherboard that I put in here. Even though cable management was kind of a bear, I will admit it was kind of difficult to get the cables routed the way I wanted to. But all in all, I think it didn't turn out too bad as far as the cable management in this thing. I don't know if any of you guys ever dealt with building a computer in a cube case. The cable management can get a little weird sometimes, especially since you have a motherboard that is not facing upright but laying down. And also if you're using some type of DVD or CD-ROM drive, that's going to be mounted above that. So you got to get the wires running up there as far as power and SATA up to that particular part of the case. So it can get a little dicey. Plus I had to put in an internal 4-hub USB because the motherboard only came with one USB header, and I have USB ports and a card reader up here, and I wanted both to be functional. So I did install an NZXT 4-hub internal USB hub, or 4-port internal USB hub, I'm sorry. And it actually worked out rather well. I was able to get full functionality out of all the front IOs, and everything works flawlessly. So that worked out really nice. I am a big fan of the RGB lighting I use in this thing, and I'm also just a fan of the build in general. I mean, roughly, if we're going to go cost-wise, this roughly is around the $750 to $800 range. We could probably dial that back to maybe 700 because you can kind of eliminate some of the aesthetic features like the RGB lighting, the LED fans, and things of that nature. Maybe going with the stock cooler instead of the Hyper Evo 212 that I put in here. And that could definitely chew back costs a lot, back probably down into the sub 700, below $700 range, which is kind of sweet, especially since this thing actually games pretty well. But I did run into one little snag that I will mention about. If you guys remember, when I first initially did the build or was getting the parts for the build, I decided to go with the Intel Pentium 60 or G4400, and that was just a terrible idea. I will admit, it was terrible. Really should have rethought that a little bit better because it is a dual core processor with just 2 threads. It's literally just a bare bone basic dual core processor, which is great for most base computing and whatnot. But as soon as I tried to game in any way, shape, or form with this thing, now it did play The Sims, so I can't really say it was totally a fail as far as the gaming on this thing. But when I tried to run Forza Apex Motorsport, it was a no-go. And instantly, as soon as I booted up, it basically told me that your processor sucks and we're going to low settings. So tried to run it and it was just a stuttering mess. Like, it was just totally unplayable. I mean, it was getting about 5 to 10 FPS at low settings. It was just terrible. And I think that was purely based on the fact that there just was not enough threads on that processor to fully, process the frames being rendered by the GPU in this thing, which we've before mentioned is a GTX 1050 Ti, which is, I have to say, a really good graphics card for what they consider the low end of the spectrum as far as gaming GPUs. This thing is fairly decent. Like, I can't really complain about it too much. And paired with, well, let me go back to the processor ordeal. So basically, when I found out that G4400 was just not going to cut the mustard, I end up upgrading from that to the G4560, which is also a dual core processor, but here's the dramatic difference. It has 4 threads, which with the higher thread count, it definitely allows for more simultaneous information processing, and definitely allows the GTX 1050 in this thing to be basically pushed to its limit, which the 4400 was not allowing. Like, it was definitely a hardcore bottleneck on the GPU, and like I said, I guess I didn't really think that through all the way when I initially chose the processor. I was basically looking at the price, and I really should have looked at the fact that it just did not have enough threads. Because to be honest, guys, any type of game you want to do, you want to have at least a 4-thread processor, either. Which it's kind of funny that they came out with the 4560, because in my eyes, it's basically an i3. They did trim a couple features off of it, features that most basic computer users will not even notice. So for all intents and purposes, it's a very cheap i3. But the i3 is also a dual-core 4-thread. So i3 all the way up to i7 are basically the processors you want to use as far as gaming. Any type of just straight dual-core processor is just not going to cut the mustard as far as any type of current gaming scenarios. Maybe way older games that could probably pull off without a hitch, but anything somewhat bleeding edge or AAA, it's just not even going to come close to any type of realistic or playable performance in any type of rig. I don't care what GPU you throw at it. The CPU is just does not have enough horsepower to really get those frames pumped. So my mistake initially. So that also kind of skewed the price of this build, because that G4400 was at a price point of about $50 to $60, whereas the G4560 is anywhere from, that's between your $80 and $90 range. I actually had to go to a box store and pick this thing up. I actually have a local computer store that's a couple cities away. I mean, they're not really the most stocked as far, they're not like a Micro Center or anything, which I would love for there to be a Micro Center around here, but there's not. The closest one would be in Kansas City. But, I was able to go there and at least pick up this processor. They had it in stock. I paid maybe $4 or $5 more than I would have paid if I had bought it at maybe Newegg or possibly Amazon. But at that price point, I am an Amazon Prime member, so I probably wouldn't pay for shipping if I went with Amazon. But I think the $4 can offset the shipping costs, and that way I was able to get it directly in my hands and immediately throw it in a system that desperately needed it. So at the end of the day, it was kind of a hard lesson for me. When I initially picked the processor, I thought I was going to at least be good enough to use with this GTX 1050 being at, like I said before, NVIDIA puts that on the lower end of the stack. I thought it would be a good combination, but yeah, it definitely just did not have the thread count to really push this thing to its limit and give it the headroom it needed to fully display its power. So yeah, now the build is reconfigured with the G4560 Intel Pentium, and it is a great performer. Actually, I do have some benchmarks here. Now, the benchmarks is going to be a little weird, because I was just going to shoot you guys straight benchmarks of, all the numbers that this thing pulled, but I figured just to the sake of comparison, I did throw the numbers that my Red Queen build, which is my own personal rig, throws up, which is kind of a bad comparison, because, we're talking old AMD versus new Intel, GTX 1050 Ti versus RX 480, which is more of a mid to high range graphics card, 4 gigs of VRAM versus 8 gigs of VRAM. Either way, it's a very slanted scale, but it's just something to compare it to, so you guys can kind of see how it would stack up to a, I guess, more mid-range gaming PC versus what would be considered a entry-level gaming PC, and kind of see what the differences truly are. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get to that data. Let's just start smashing that out and getting that out of the way. right, guys, so there you have it, the Xavia build. And in my opinion, I think it came out pretty good. It's definitely giving you some solid performance in 1080p gaming. If you're willing to sacrifice a couple settings and turning a couple of things down, you could definitely get a solid 60 frames per second in most AAA games. I won't necessarily say all, but definitely most. And in my eyes, I think it's a great build, especially for that. Like I said before, if you trim down a couple of things that I put into the system and ran it with the bare essentials, you could definitely get this rig up and running for anywhere from $650 to $700 without a doubt, without even breaking a sweat. Like I said, this was just a showcase of this build. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully, you think it's a good build, and hopefully the new owners who should be coming tomorrow, as of the filming of this video, which is May 27th, Saturday, they should be coming in tomorrow to pick her up, and hopefully they will also enjoy the build and be be happy with the outcome and everything, and definitely think this PC was worth the time and the money that was put into it. So I guess that pretty much ends it and wraps it up for this video. Hope you guys enjoy. Of course, as always, subscribe, comment, hit like, hit dislike. Just let me know what your thoughts are about this whole video and about my channel. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.